The Health Ministry of Gaza reported that the number of Gazans murdered since October 7th has risen to 31,045, whereas 72,654 people have been injured. In Nigeria, relatives of children abducted by criminal group demand answers from authorities. In Indonesia, floods have killed at least 19 people and 7 others are reported missing in the west of the country. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Sunday, the Health Ministry of Gaza reported that the number of Gazans murdered since October 7th has risen to 31,045, whereas 72,654 people have been injured. Over the last 24 hours, they also report that Israeli occupation forces have committed 8 massacres against families in Gaza, killing 85 Palestinians and injuring 130 others. But Palestinian officials recalled that still many victims remain under the rubble as the Israeli occupation forces deliberately prevent ambulances and civil defense crews from reaching the affected sites. The ministry reiterated that 72% of Palestinian victims are women and children, adding that the number of Palestinians killed by malnutrition and dehydration has risen to 25. As Muslims around the world get ready for Ramadan, extreme hunger is spreading in Gaza. United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees representative Philippe Lazzarini commented on X that with the holy month of Ramadan approaching, worshippers in Gaza need a respite to have some peace of mind. He is advocating for what he considers to be a long overdue ceasefire. In this sense, Lazzarini stated that for the people of Gaza, Ramadan comes as extreme hunger spreads, displacement continues, and fear plus anxiety prevail amid threats of military operation on Rafah. Afterwards, he continued highlighting that this month should bring a ceasefire for those who have suffered the most. On Saturday, Sweden, another top donor to the United Nations Agency for Aid Palestinian Refugees, said it would resume funding weeks after over a dozen countries halted hundreds of millions of dollars of support in response to Israel allegations against UNRWA. As we speak, a ship carrying tons of humanitarian aid should be setting sail from Cyprus to Gaza after international donors launch a sea corridor to supply the besieged territory facing widespread hunger after 5 months of war. Sweden's funding decision follows a similar move by the European Union and Canada after UNRWA warned that it could collapse and leave Gaza's already desperate population of over 2 million people with even less medical food and food assistance. Palestinian authorities have warned of a slowdown in the construction sector following the start of the Israeli aggression on October 7, 2023. According to the Central Statistics Office, the number of construction licenses issued in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories during the last quarter of 2023 fell by 26%. The Statistics Bureau also warned of a 24% drop in new housing construction during the same period in 2023. Meanwhile, data from the United Nations indicates that home demolitions by the Israeli army have caused the displacement of almost 1,000 people in the West Bank and of over 65,000 in the Gaza Strip. In Palestine, dozens of people, mostly women and children, are succumbing to dehydration and malnutrition due to the Israeli blockade to the entry of food. Medical sources reported the death of a young woman and 2-month-old baby due to the famine Palestinians are currently subjected to. The number of deaths due to malnutrition only reflects the cases that reach the hospitals. It does not take into account those who died in their homes. The Israeli siege further complicates the humanitarian situation of extreme shortages of food supply, water, medicine, and fuel.
Now on regular days, and we can barely get water. So what about the upcoming Ramadan? That's a general problem. In the camp, we have sick children who need sugars and proteins. Our children are getting dizzy. I swear for the last 5 months, we haven't seen a single egg or meat. The sweet things arrive scarcely.
Social organizations in the Netherlands have denounced the presence of Israeli President Isaac Herzog at the opening ceremony of the National Holocaust Museum. The presence of the Israeli president was taken as a provocation by thousands of people who took to the streets of the city of Amsterdam to express their support for the Palestinian people. They crowded the vicinity of the National Holocaust Museum to demand that the Israeli president be immediately arrested on the grounds of what they say are war crimes against the people of Gaza. In Lebanon, an Israeli attack left at least 5 people killed and 9 wounded. According to local sources, Israel launched 2 missiles into a house in Kirbet Selm town. The attack claimed the lives of Marish family's father, his wife, his 2 children, and another person. Ambulance and relief teams work at the scene to recover the bodies and transport them to the government hospital in Tib Ninin. The bombardment also resulted in 9 people injured, in addition to the total collapse of the house and heavy losses of dozens surrounding homes. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Argentina, President Javier Milei reverses decree to increase executive salaries. On Saturday, Milei informed that he will revoke the decree establishing the increase of his salary and that of hierarchical officials in the executive branch by almost 50%. Appealing to his anti-caste discourse, the president blamed former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner for the measure. However, the salary increase he granted to himself and his cabinet was implemented through Decree 206/24. This regulation had been signed on February 28 by the President himself, together with the Chief of Staff, Nicolas Pos, and the Minister of Human Resources, Sandra Petovelo. In Haiti, violence escalates. Armed men attacked public institutions throughout Port-au-Prince, the country's capital. Heavy shootings were reported on Friday night in several areas of the capital and near the National Palace. According to local reports, armed groups carried out simultaneous attacks against several police stations and reportedly burned the Interior Ministry. At the same time, criminal elements attacked the walls of the international airport to allow the access of individuals to the runway. The Haitian government declared a state of emergency for 1 month in the Western Department and a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. until March 10th. The United Nations called on the international community to finance the multinational mission in Haiti despite rejections by regional leaders of what they consider a military invasion against the Caribbean island. Amid escalating violence by paramilitary groups, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a financial support to the multinational mission in Haiti. Guterres also reiterated his call to make immediate measures to advance in the political process leading to elections in the Caribbean island. The United Nations estimates that to solve the crisis in Haiti, it will be necessary to raise some $674 million in 2023. In Costa Rica, the labor force has decreased by 137,251 people with regards to 2023. According to a survey by the National Statistics and Census Institute from November 2023 to January 2024, the country's workforce was 2.3 million people, of which 1.4 million were men and 870,000 were women. The study revealed that the net labor participation rate nationwide fell 4 percentage points and stood at 55.1%. Also, the percentage of informal employment for the same quarter stood at 37.5%, which means that workforce shrinkage is due to a reduction in formal jobs. In Bolivia, the government reports an increase in gross domestic product of 46,713 billion US dollars in 2023. According to financial officials, Bolivia's gross domestic product growth demonstrates the country's economic and social model works. According to official sources, gross domestic product in 2005 stood at $9.5 million. Therefore, the latest figures show that the economic model advanced by the government is sustainable. Officials said the data shows the recovery of the economy following the health, social and financial hardships brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Brazil's Supreme Federal Court has sentenced another 15 people involved in the January 8, 2023 coup attempt against all three branches of government. The Supreme Court issued verdicts on each defendant individually, with sentences ranging from 3 to 17 years in prison. They were convicted for overriding the democratic rule of law, qualified damage, attempted coup d'etat, deterioration of declared patrimony, and criminal association. To this date, with this latest ruling, so far, 131 people have been sentenced on the January 8th case. In Cuba, Havana hosts the 21st Drum Festival from March 5th to the 10th at its main venues in the Theater America and Galeano Avenue. This 21st edition of the International Festival ends on Sunday with an award and a gala night. The closing night will honor the Muñequitos de Matanzas and the orchestra Adalberto Álvarez y su son. On the other hand, on Saturday, different groups will be performing, which promises a great party at the rhythm of the highest level of percussion, also for experts in the field, and the awards of the timbal and conga test. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Nigeria, relatives of children abducted by criminal group demand answers from authorities. The parents and other relatives denounced the provincial authorities' delay in investigating to find the children's whereabouts. The minors were extracted during the armed group's raid at their school last Thursday. The local police assured they suspect irregular groups operating in the area are responsible for the kidnapping of children, and they carry out these kinds of actions to request ransom. The gunmen forced their way into the school premises in the Sokoto village of Giran-Bakuso in the country's northwest and started firing shots sporadically, waking and causing panic among the pupils, according to school officials. In Ethiopia, the African Union has requested from the parties involved in the conflict in Sudan to respect a total ceasefire during the month of Ramadan. Through a communiqué, the African Union recalled that a ceasefire during the Muslims' holy month could facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid to civilian populations affected by the conflict. The African Union also urged all parties to assume their responsibilities to spare the Sudanese people and people in neighboring states from famine and a humanitarian disaster. Despite the efforts of the international community, there has been no peaceful resolution of a conflict that has already claimed 9,000 lives and displaced 7 million Sudanese. Senegal's presidential candidates kicked off their election campaigns after weeks of protest over President Macky Sall's decision to delay the process. The 19 candidates for the presidency of the African nation have shortened the deadline to gather supporters ahead of the elections scheduled for March 24th. This happened after Senegal's Constitutional Council, which is the country's electoral body, rejected the 10-month postponement of the elections announced by President Macky Sall. This event triggered a series of violent protests which aroused the concern of the international community about the democratic stability of the nation. Members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, agreed to strongly promote economic cooperation. The agreement comes within the framework provided by the adoption of 14 initiatives proposed by Laos in its condition of pro tempore president for the intergovernmental organization, which focus on the recovery and connection between the economies of the area, as well as on the creation of an inclusive and sustainable future. At the meeting, the ministers also discussed how to improve existing Asian agreements on trade of goods, on digital economy issues related to competition, among others. The adoption of this program took place during the 30th restricted meeting of Asian economic ministers held on March 8th and 9th. In the Vatican City, Pope Francis urged Ukraine to engage in dialogue to reach a lasting solution to the ongoing conflict with Russia. In an interview, the Supreme Pontiff urged Kyiv to initiate a suspension of hostilities in the light of an accurate observation of the situation and with a view towards the well-being of the civilian population. He also called for a ceasefire and urged the assessment of negotiations to achieve a truce and an end to the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. On this point, referring to any war situation, he emphasized that dialogue is the way to achieve a fair and lasting peace with the support of international powers. In Portugal, early parliamentary elections proceed normally this Sunday. Portuguese citizens went to the polls this Sunday to elect all 230 deputies of the Republic's Assembly, who will elect the Prime Minister in a day that has been going on normally during the first 5 hours of voting. Portugal's leading candidates for Prime Minister, Socialist Pedro Nuno Santos and Conservative Luis Montenegro, expressed their hope for a high participation in the country's legislative elections this Sunday. The polling stations of this European nation started their activities at 8 local time and will close at 19 local time. According to the electoral authorities, at 12 local time, the level of participation was around 25%. These elections were called earlier after Socialist Antonio Costa resigned as Prime Minister last November for alleged irregularities. In France, the rains, winds and floods associated to Cyclone Monica have left 6 people missing and thousands without electricity. Guard Department authorities say rescue workers are searching for the missing persons after 3 vehicles were swept away by the waters. Officials say the power outage is currently affecting 1,800 homes in the departments of Drôme and Ardèche, areas which experience winds of over 130 km per hour. Meanwhile, the Meteorological Agency has issued an orange alert to dozens of territories due to the risk of flooding. In Indonesia, floods have killed at least 19 people and 7 others are reported missing in the west of the country. The tragedy is taking place in the Indonesian province of Western Sumatra due to the intense rainfall reported since last Thursday. For their part, local authorities explain that the rescue work is complicated since the victims are not only swept away by the strong currents of the overflowing rivers, but are also buried during landslides. Likewise, it was reported that the strong currents damaged 16 bridges and several houses, as well as cut off traffic on roads, affecting the delivery of humanitarian aid. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.